The silence after the crash wasn't the kind you expect, not a ringing nor a hollow echo, but a heavy, suffocating blanket. It was the silence of disbelief, of shattered glass and splintered wood, and of my brother Liam lying still amidst the wreckage. We'd been driving back from our grandmother, a trip we'd made countless times, the familiar winding roads now a cruel, twisted mockery of memory. Liam, always the life of the party, the one who could make even the most mundane moment feel like a grand adventure, was gone, or so I thought. The paramedics arrived, their voices a distant, garbled hum, and I watched, numb, as they worked on him, their faces grim. Then a gasp, a flicker of movement, and the world tilted on its axis. Liam was alive, but changed. The doctors spoke of a traumatic brain injury, of potential personality shifts, of a future irrevocably altered. But none of that prepared me for what happened next. Weeks turned into months, and as Liam slowly regained consciousness, a strange, unsettling intimacy began to bloom between us. It wasn't the familiar bond of siblings, the easy camaraderie we'd shared all our lives. It was something else. A look in his eyes, a lingering touch, a shared silence that crackled with unspoken words. It started subtly, a feeling I dismissed as grief, a desperate clinging to the familiar in the face of unimaginable loss. But then, one night in the quiet of his hospital room, he reached for my hand, his fingers tracing the lines of my palm, and said my name not with the casual affection of a brother, but with a raw, yearning intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a terrifying, exhilarating moment of realization, a forbidden truth that shattered the very foundation of our relationship. He wasn't just my brother anymore, and neither was I just his sister. The accident, the trauma, had somehow rewired us, forging a connection that defied all logic, all morality, all sense. It was a secret, a dangerous, intoxicating secret that threatened to consume us both. The twist, he'd always felt this way, or so he claimed, but the accident had broken the walls he'd built, the ones that kept him from admitting his feelings, even to himself. And suddenly I wasn't sure if I was the victim of a tragic circumstance or a participant in a long-buried desire. The hospital became our clandestine haven, a place where stolen glances and whispered confessions replaced the sterile routine of medical charts and therapy sessions. We navigated this treacherous terrain with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, each touch, each shared breath, a transgression against everything we'd ever known. The weight of our secret pressed down on us, a constant, suffocating presence, yet the pull between us was undeniable, a force that defied reason and morality. We were trapped in a liminal space, suspended between the familiar comfort of family and the forbidden allure of something entirely new. The lines blurred, the boundaries dissolved, and the world outside the hospital walls seemed distant, unreal. We created our own reality, a world where the impossible became possible, where the unspoken desires of a lifetime finally found voice. But the illusion couldn't last. Our family, oblivious to the seismic shift within us, began to plan for Liam's return home, a return to normalcy that threatened to shatter our fragile secret world. The thought of resuming our old lives, of pretending that nothing had changed, was unbearable. We were like two halves of a whole, irrevocably bound yet destined to live a lie. The strain began to show, the unspoken tension radiating between us, creating a palpable unease that even our well-meaning parents couldn't ignore. One evening, during a family dinner in the hospital cafeteria, my mother, her eyes filled with a concern I'd never seen before, asked me if I was all right. The question, seemingly innocuous, hung in the air, thick with unspoken accusations. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of our secret threatening to crush me. Liam, sensing my distress, reached for my hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through me. It was a small gesture, a seemingly innocent act of brotherly comfort, but in that moment it felt like a declaration, a defiant assertion of our forbidden love. And then the second twist, my mother had seen the looks, the touches, the way we were together. She had seen it all, not with anger, but with a deep, unsettling sadness. She had known something was changing, but she'd hoped it was just the trauma, a temporary thing. She had been watching us, and she knew. The revelation hung in the air, a silent accusation that shattered the fragile veneer of normalcy. My mother's gaze, once filled with concern, now held a mixture of grief and a quiet, unsettling acceptance. It wasn't the anger I'd anticipated, the fiery condemnation of a forbidden love. It was a deeper, more profound sorrow, a lament for the loss of something precious, something irretrievable. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the clinking of cutlery and the hushed murmurs of other hospital visitors. Liam's hand, still intertwined with mine, felt both a comfort and a brand, a mark of our transgression. The weight of our secret, once a heavy burden, now felt like an unbearable weight, threatening to crush us beneath its enormity. We were exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare before the eyes of the one person we desperately tried to deceive. The dinner, once a symbol of family unity, now felt like a cruel mockery, a stark reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. My father, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, continued to talk about Liam's discharge, his voice a droning counterpoint to the turmoil raging within me. Each word, each sentence felt like a nail in the coffin of our secret love. We were caught in a vortex of conflicting emotions, torn between the overwhelming desire to confess and the paralyzing fear of the consequences. The hospital, once our sanctuary, now felt like a prison, its sterile walls closing in on us, suffocating us with the weight of our unspoken truths. We retreated to Liam's room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. We sat on the edge of his bed, our hands still intertwined, our bodies aching for a closeness that felt both forbidden and inevitable. The air crackled with unspoken confessions, the unspoken desire to finally break free from the shackles of our secret. Then Liam spoke, his voice a low, trembling whisper, telling me that he would tell our father everything, that he could not live a lie. He would tell him that he loved me not as a brother, but as a man loves a woman. And then the third twist, he had already written a letter, a full confession, and given it to the hospital chaplain to give to our father in case he didn't make it. He had known deep down that this was unsustainable, that the truth would eventually surface, and he wanted to control the narrative, to give our father the chance to understand, or at least to know. He had been preparing for this moment, for the inevitable confrontation, long before my mother's gaze gave him away. The chaplain's revelation, a quiet, almost apologetic admission, hung in the sterile air of Liam's hospital room, a stark testament to the depth of his resolve. He had anticipated this moment, prepared for the inevitable fallout, leaving behind a written confession, a desperate plea for understanding delivered through the neutral hands of a spiritual confidant. The letter, a tangible representation of his forbidden love, now lay in my father's hands, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The knowledge that Liam had taken such a decisive step, that he had dared to lay bare his soul, filled me with a mixture of awe and terror. We were no longer passive participants in a clandestine affair. We were active agents in a rebellion against the very foundations of our family. The waiting was excruciating, a torturous limbo suspended between the fragile hope of acceptance and the crushing weight of potential rejection. Each passing moment stretched into an eternity, amplifying the silence, magnifying the unspoken fears that gnawed at our souls. We clung to each other, our bodies intertwined, seeking solace in the forbidden intimacy that had become our lifeline. The hospital, once a symbol of healing, now felt like a battleground, a place where our love would be tested, judged, and perhaps condemned. The tension in the air was palpable, a suffocating pressure that threatened to crush us beneath its weight. We were like soldiers awaiting the verdict of a war we had unwittingly waged, our fate hanging in the balance. When my father finally arrived, his face etched with a mixture of confusion and pain, the silence in the room became deafening. He held the letter in his trembling hands, the words a stark indictment of the love we dared to share. The confrontation was not explosive, not filled with rage or condemnation. It was a quiet, almost mournful exchange, a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. My father spoke of his confusion, his disbelief, his struggle to reconcile the brother and sister he knew with the lovers before him. He spoke of the pain he felt, the sense of betrayal, but also of the love he had for his children, a love that transcended the boundaries of his understanding. And then a fourth twist, he reveals that he had read some of Liam's journals as a child, finding hints of these feelings, but had dismissed them as childish infatuations, and had tried to gently steer Liam towards other relationships, and now realizing that he had actively tried to stop something that was inevitable. He had always suspected something, but never wanted to admit it to himself. My father's confession, a quiet admission of his own internal struggle, hung in the air, a testament to the complexities of love and acceptance. He spoke of his own blind spots, the preconceived notions that had clouded his judgment, the desperate attempts to mold his children into the image he had envisioned. His words, though painful, were not laced with malice or condemnation. They were the words of a father grappling with a reality he never anticipated, a reality that challenged his deepest beliefs and shattered his carefully constructed world. He spoke of his love for us, a love that, despite his confusion and pain, remained unwavering, a constant in the face of unimaginable change. The conversation that followed was a slow, agonizing process of revelation and reconciliation, a delicate dance between acceptance and understanding. We spoke of our love not as a transgression, but as a force that had irrevocably altered the course of our lives. We spoke of the pain of living a lie, the suffocating weight of our secret, and the desperate need to be true to ourselves. My father listened, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and a dawning understanding. He didn't offer immediate acceptance, nor did he offer condemnation. He offered something more profound, a willingness to try, a commitment to navigate this uncharted territory with an open heart and a willingness to learn. The hospital, once a symbol of our confinement, now became a space of healing, a place where our family began to rebuild, to redefine the boundaries of love and acceptance. We stepped out of the hospital into the sunlight not as brother and sister, but as lovers, our hands intertwined, our hearts filled with a fragile hope. And then the final devastating twist. My father, in his quiet acceptance, revealed that he had known our grandmother had a similar relationship in her youth, a secret she had taken to her grave. He had recognized the signs, the subtle nuances of our interaction, because he had seen them before in the woman he loved most. The very person who had brought us into this world, the person who had shaped our understanding of family, had walked a similar path, a path of forbidden love, a path that had ultimately led to a lifetime of hidden pain. The title, From Family to Lovers, The Secret Love That Changed Us, wasn't just a description of our journey. It was a reflection of a hidden legacy, a secret woven into the very fabric of our family history. The love that we found was not new, but an echo of a past, a painful history that had been buried. We were not pioneers, but inheritors of a secret history.